Okay, we're back.
Johnny Carson was the king of American late night. Calm, polished, unshakable. The man who could control almost any room with a smile and one perfect line. For 30 years on The Tonight Show, he made chaos look manageable. Then the animals arrived. Across his most unforgettable animal segments, Carson faced crocodile jaws, python coils, flying bats, nervous vultures, growling cheetahs. These were the moments when the desk stopped protecting him. The jokes turned into survival tools, and America watched its most controlled host come dangerously close to losing it. 1. Crocodile. 1 twitch from the ER. October 13th, 1977.
Would you welcome Jim Fowler?
Brings out an 8-year-old American crocodile, and Johnny Carson immediately redraws the safest part of the stage. The king of late night has met something with teeth. The downstream joke does more than get a laugh. It draws a survival line across the studio floor. Carson has turned fear into timing, and now Fowler gives that fear a story from underneath Los Angeles. That sewage system detail detonates the whole segment. A city legend has crawled out of the pipes and landed at Carson's feet. The story is strange enough to laugh at, and the animal is close enough to make the laugh tighten. Carson has been surviving this from a careful distance. Fowler is about to erase that distance by turning the crocodile into a hands-on lesson. The danger moves from the floor into the grip. This is the pressure point. Fowler talks about the spin, the tail, and the violence stored inside that body. Carson can hear the lesson, and he can also see the hospital visit hiding inside one bad twitch. Fowler pulls the room back into science with skulls, jaws, and teeth. The audience gets a lesson, and Carson gets a few seconds to breathe. That calm matters, because the animal still owns the floor. The segment starts to feel contained. Fowler has the animal locked down. Carson has the room laughing, and the danger seems boxed inside the demonstration. Then the crocodile reminds everyone that control here is borrowed. That sudden movement rips through the safety net. One violent twitch, and the comedy turns into impact math. Jaw, tail, grip, reflex, emergency room. Carson covers it with humor, because that is the only armor he has. The final joke releases the room. Fowler gets the crocodile back under the lesson. Carson gets the audience back under the laugh, and late night survives another animal that never agreed to play by television rules. 2. Legless lizard, the snake alarm. On another Tonight Show visit, Jim Fowler turned a tiny animal into a full-body alarm for Johnny Carson. Jim Fowler reaches into his pocket and pulls out the kind of surprise that makes a grown host rethink the furniture. Carson's first laugh comes with a warning inside it. Something has entered the room with no legs, no announcement, and no respect for personal space. Carson asks the question before the audience can breathe it out. The shape says, danger faster than Fowler can explain it. The name may be lizard, yet the body lands in the room like a snake alarm. This is where Carson draws the survival line. Fowler offers him the head, and Johnny reaches for the safest end of the problem. In his mind, the head means teeth, reflex, bite zone, emergency room math. That hesitation is the whole joke. Carson is close enough to play along, and far enough to keep his face out of the medical report. The room starts to relax because Fowler has control. Carson still treats the creature like a live wire in a tuxedo segment. Every inch of contact feels negotiated. Then, Fowler gives the fear a Hollywood passport. This same creature helped create the snake terror in Raiders of the Lost Ark. The thing Carson refuses to trust has already terrified millions from a movie screen. That is the strange power of the moment. The animal is small, Fowler is calm, and Carson's instincts are louder than both of them. Late night does not need a monster here. It only needs something that looks close enough to one. 3. Giant bat, Carson's escape speed.
And
When
also the
Jim
host of the TV series of
Fowler
specials
brought out a
called
giant
Wildlife and
bat on the
Adventure. Would you
Tonight
welcome
Show,
Jim Fowler?
Johnny Carson tried to treat it like another animal segment. The danger zone lifts off the floor the moment Jim Fowler opens his hands. Carson clocks the shape before the audience does. The wings, the size, the face. Everything about it arrives like a warning label. His industrial strength bat line gets the laugh. Then his eyes start tracking the exits. That glove tells Carson the truth. Fowler is wearing leather armor, and Johnny is being invited closer to the bite zone. The joke stays on his face while his body starts filing a safety report. Now the interview becomes a survival grip. Carson asks how to hold a bat because the question is suddenly practical. One wrong hand, one loose foot, one wing beat near the face, and the desk becomes useless. This is where Carson's cool starts leaking through the seams. He keeps smiling, keeps performing, keeps trying to look like the host. The bat keeps twitching, and every twitch punches another hole in the act. Then the bat takes the air, and Carson's body detonates before the joke can arrive. He moves like the ceiling has fallen toward him. For 1 second, the king of late night is pure prey reflex. His own line says everything. He never knew he could move that fast. The bat steals the room, strips away the desk, and turns Johnny Carson into a man discovering his emergency speed on national television. 4. Toothed Frog, the hidden bite zone. Johnny Carson had already survived claws, wings, tails, and teeth. Then Jim Fowler handed him something smaller and saved the worst detail for the end. Carson hears the setup, and his warning system fires instantly. He knows Fowler's calm voice can hide a trapdoor. The animal is still inside the bucket, and Johnny is already bracing for impact. That line about trust carries panic under the polish. Carson is smiling through the oldest late-night gamble, putting his hand near something Fowler says is safe. The bucket has become a blind spot with a pulse. Now the trap becomes physical. Carson touches the frog. The body swells, and the whole room watches his confidence take a hit. The creature changes shape in his hands, and Johnny's face starts losing the argument. This is controlled panic at its cleanest. Carson keeps the segment alive with manners, and every movement from the frog attacks those manners from underneath. Fowler pulls him deeper into contact. The handling turns into tickling, and Carson has to negotiate with wet skin, sudden movement, and his own disgust. Every inch of this feels like a handshake, with a medical waiver attached. Then, the delayed warning lands. The frog has teeth. That single fact rewrites every second Carson just survived. The bucket, the grip, the tickling, the swollen body, all of it suddenly has a bite zone. Carson's reaction is the real payoff. He realizes Fowler let him touch the problem first, and
You always drop these little tidbits on me after I've been handling
the frog wins through timing, and Johnny survives by turning betrayal into a laugh. 5. Python, wrapped in cold muscle. Joan Embery arrives on The Tonight Show with a python lesson that begins as wildlife education and quickly starts sounding like emergency training. The warning arrives before the animal. Unhinged jaws, curved teeth, a grip that can turn a pet into a crisis. Carson listens like a host, and his face starts doing the math, like a man standing near a live wire. Then, the emergency instruction lands. If the python locks on, the head may have to come off. That single detail hangs over the rest of the segment like a blade. Now the studio is waiting for the animal that makes that sentence necessary. When the python arrives, the lesson gains weight. 50 or 60 pounds of living muscle crosses the stage, and Carson's safe distance starts shrinking. This is the moment the python starts taking territory. It wraps into Carson's space, and the desk loses all authority. Johnny's smile stays alive, while the rest of him begins negotiating with cold muscle. Carson is close enough to keep the bit moving, and trapped enough for the laugh to tighten. The snake has turned him into part of the demonstration. Now Joan turns the joke back into a warning. Around the neck, around the waist, the python becomes a map of pressure points. Carson just felt that weight near his body, and the safety lesson suddenly sounds personal. By the end, Carson has survived the python with a smile, a joke, and a very careful relationship with the head. The animal leaves the stage as a lesson in distance. With a snake this strong, distance is equipment, 6. Vulture, standing still for impact.
Here's
Among
Jim's
Johnny
next animal.
Carson's most unforgettable animal moments,
trouble with getting
this
us
one
over here.
survives because the joke had wings, claws, and Johnny himself as the landing target. Carson names the obvious the second he sees it. That bird looks like a warning with feathers. The laugh lands first, then Johnny's face starts reading the beak, the claws, and the size of the thing coming toward him. The glove changes the rules. Once Fowler asks Carson to put on leather, the bit becomes a contract with the animal. Johnny plays up the routine, and every exaggerated movement says the same thing. His hand is about to become the runway. Now Carson has to call lightning toward him. That name sounds harmless until the room realizes he is calling a vulture into flight. Carson keeps joking, keeps standing, and turns his own fear into a target the whole studio can watch. This is the strike point. Lightning takes the air, crosses the studio, and Carson has one job: stand still for impact. For one frozen second, the king of late night becomes a landing strip with a pulse. That applause is relief exploding. Carson held the line long enough for the bird to land, and the room detonates because everyone saw how close instinct came to breaking the pose. Then Carson does what made him Carson. He pulls his dignity back into place, turns the fear into a story, and lets Fowler guide the room back from the edge. The vulture gets the flight, Johnny gets the laugh, and live television gets one more unique moment. 7. Cheetahs, the growl behind the cage. When Joan Embery brought 2 young cheetahs onto The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson recognized them from an earlier visit, then saw their size, the cage, and the stare that turned the reunion into a survival test. Carson remembers holding them when they were smaller. Now that memory has claws. He is looking at young animals, and his face is already reading adult danger through the bars. Joan tells him to look into their eyes and speak with confidence. That is a terrifying assignment when the animal looking back has predator wiring behind the stare. Carson's joke about tearing him apart gets the laugh, and the cage becomes the only reason the joke survives. That line is Carson's armor. He sounds like the threat, and every inch of his body knows the truth. One open latch would turn the desk into a crime scene. Then, the sound changes everything. Carson hears the growl and asks what it means, because the room has just received a warning in the animal's own language. Once Joan names it, Johnny's distance becomes survival policy. This is the real pressure point. No claws touch him. No teeth reach him. The growl alone makes the king of late night step back from his own courage. Carson's safari line lands because it tells the truth cleanly. He would have been a mile down the road, and everyone believes him. The cheetahs never leave the cage, and they still make Johnny Carson rehearse his escape plan on national television. 8. Goliath beetle, the airborne betrayal. When Jim Fowler brought a massive Goliath beetle onto The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson tried to understand whether he was looking at an insect, a prop, or a little nightmare waiting for its secret weapon. Carson's disbelief is the first warning. He studies the beetle like it must be a toy, a wind-up trick, some little machine built to scare him. His brain is trying to make the animal safe by turning it into a prop. For a while, the room settles into curiosity. The beetle looks strange, oversized, almost impossible. Yet it stays inside the rules Carson can understand. Then the rules leave the table. That is the rupture. The beetle takes the air, and Carson's whole body fires before the joke can organize itself. A thing he barely trusted on the table has just entered the face zone.
Well, what the hell else don't you know about him?
That line turns panic into an investigation. Carson is no longer asking about the beetle. He is auditing the entire animal segment in real time. Now, every missing detail feels dangerous. If the flying part arrived late, poison suddenly sounds possible too. Carson's sarcasm has teeth because his trust just got knocked off the desk. The chameleon changes the energy without lowering the strangeness. Carson starts studying the eyes, the movement, the tiny alien machinery of the face. After the beetle's airborne betrayal, even curiosity comes with a little distance. Then, live television meets the animal veto. Jim wants a color change. The chameleon refuses the performance, and Carson sees the collapse instantly. No panic this time. Just nature declining the script. That is why these Carson animal segments still work. Jim brings the knowledge, Johnny brings the timing, and the animals keep the final vote. One beetle flies, one chameleon refuses, and the show becomes alive in a way no rehearsal could manufacture. 9. Water buffalo, the horned tank. When Jim Fowler brings a water buffalo named Waldo onto The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson finds himself standing beside a living tank with horns and a name that sounds far too friendly for its size. Carson reads the danger before he trusts the name. Waldo may sound gentle, and the animal in front of him carries the weight, horns, and stillness of something built to move people out of the way. The safety question lands first. Then Carson tries to make the threat smaller with a joke.
Waldo, good name for him.
The mirror gives Carson a safer target, and he takes the shot instantly. Then he repairs it just as fast. Because insulting a water buffalo at close range feels less funny when the water buffalo can hear you. Now, Fowler moves the danger from observation into participation. Carson draws the line exactly where the horns begin. His answer gets the laugh, and it also tells the truth about every instinct in his body. Then, Carson discovers the most dangerous kind of confidence, the kind that arrives when a massive animal actually listens. Every kneel makes the room louder, and every inch Waldo lowers makes Johnny look a little more convinced he has command over a horned engine. For 1 second, Carson owns the room. Then, Waldo shifts, and the illusion starts cracking under the weight of the animal itself. Johnny's voice stays playful, and his body starts preparing for impact. That is the real joke. Carson can command the moment, and Waldo can erase the moment by standing up. Waldo never needs to charge. He wins by making Carson believe control is possible, then reminding him that late-night authority weighs nothing next to a living animal with horns. 10. Horned frog, the poison warning. For the final animal, Joan Embry hands Johnny Carson a box, a horned frog, a ruined suit, and one safety warning that arrives far too late. That first jolt tells Carson everything. The box has already struck back, and Johnny recognizes the old animal segment pattern instantly. A harmless setup has just fired its first warning shot. Carson tries to name the creature so he can control the moment. The frog refuses to look familiar. Every awkward grip makes the animal feel less like a guest and more like a small problem with a mouth. Now, the frog hits the dignity zone. Carson's suit takes the damage and he absorbs it like a professional. The mess lands on the fabric, then his timing turns it into television. At this point, the room thinks the worst has happened. The frog has startled him, confused him, and marked the suit. Joan still has one detail left, and it changes the whole segment after Carson's hands are already involved. That is the delayed explosion. The toxin detail rewrites every second before it. The box, the grip, the suit, the hand near the face. Carson is suddenly reading the fine print after signing the contract. The frog completes the trap through timing. It startles Carson first, stains him second, and lets the warning arrive only after the evidence is already on his hands. In the end, these animal moments worked because Johnny Carson never pretended to be fearless. He let the audience see the flinch, the panic, the hesitation, and then he turned all of it into timing. Jim Fowler and Joan Embry brought the knowledge. The animals brought the danger. Carson brought the human reaction that made every second feel alive. A frog, a bat, a python, a vulture, a buffalo. Each one pushed late night out of the chair and onto the edge of instinct. If you enjoyed this look back, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell us which Carson moment you want to see next.